Great. Hi, I'm Edwin Rutsch, Director of the Center for Building a Culture of Empathy, and this is Dialogs on Building an Empathic Way of Being. And today I'm here with Jeremy Howick. Thanks, Jeremy, for joining me for this dialogue.
Thanks, Edwin. It's great to be here with you.
So I wanted to begin with just to introduce you. You're a senior researcher at the Nuffield Department of Primary Healthcare Sciences at the University of Oxford in the UK. And you started a program or organization called the Oxford Empathic Care Program, or OxCare. And it's an interdisciplinary research group that includes medical practitioners, philosophers, psychologists, sociologists, and you're looking at how to promote empathy in healthcare. And I just wanted to hear more about that program, maybe add any sort of introduction you have about yourself and how you came to start this program.
Yeah, so I'll tell you a bit about the history and then what's happening now with the program. We're just officially launching it actually in about a week and a half. So this is a great time for the interview. It grew out of my interest in placebo effects. So my research in placebo effects suggested there's a few different mechanisms for how placebos work. One of them is, of course, the one we're familiar with, positive suggestions, positive thoughts, and so on. Another one is it's empathy. When a doctor is very empathetic, that seems to benefit patients. And until recently, people thought that those benefits were simply making the patients feel better in a vague kind of way. But more recent research suggests that it can have physiological effects similar to the effects of some drugs for some ailments. So it's not that it'll cure everything, but it has some modest benefits for some very important conditions, ranging from pain, depression, anxiety, to IBS, and so on.
Okay, so what I'm hearing there is that you're researching the placebo effect, and you found that empathy is one component of the placebo effect.
That's one way to put it. Yeah, that's just right. Yeah. And it also, and in researching this, there are additional benefits of empathy. For example, it seems to lower medical legal risk, does make patients feel better, which is an important outcome. So what I'm doing right now, Edwin, is I'm doing a few things. One, I'm running a major study, a Cochrane review, for those of you who are familiar with the concept of systematic reviews, these mega studies that gather all relevant studies together. We're doing that right now as we speak on the effects of empathy and expectations for all conditions. That's about,
So this is a meta-study for all conditions on the role of empathy and in all conditions in the medical field, or?
Yeah, good qualification. It's all medical or psychological studies. Yes, it wouldn't be an education, for example.
Okay, so you're doing this meta-study, and then what's the nature of the study? Like, do you have a whole team working on this, or how are you going about doing this?
Yeah, so it's a standard Cochrane review methodology. So I'm a lead author, and then two teams of authors, because we have to screen. Right now, we're in the process of screening studies. We've got 22,000 titles, and we've got to determine which of those will be included in the eventual systematic review. And then once we've decided which ones will be included, we've got to read them carefully and take out the right data, put them onto another platform, and then do some statistical analyses to see what the effect size of empathy is. And it could be, of course, we never know when we're researchers. We don't know the answer in advance. Our background evidence suggests that empathy will have a strong effect, and we're just looking to confirm that and to test hypothesis in the most rigorous way that's known in research these days, which is a systematic review.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned the placebo effect, because I've often thought that the placebo effect is probably partially at least based on empathy. So it's great. It sounds like you're going to get the kind of scientific data to back that up, or to disprove it, I guess.
Exactly. Yeah, it's important that we we don't know the answer in advance, but we wouldn't be bothered doing it if we didn't have a lot of background evidence. And placebos are difficult to define. Part of my philosophical research has been trying to define the placebo, and some of my papers have been about that issue. I moved to a space now, Edwin, we're not trying to define it. I'm just trying to make sure we're clear about what we mean when we say placebo. When you say placebo, do you mean a sham injection? Do you mean a sugar pill? Do you mean a sham surgery? Each of these things is very different. So it's important that we tease out what we mean when we say placebo. Some people think, for example, homeopathy. The pills in homeopathy, I mean, are believed by most people to be placebos, just sugar pills. However, the time the homeopath spends with the patient, this longer consultations, empathic consultations, these things might have an effect over and above the pills, and that's what we're looking into.
Is this center that you're creating like going to be an ongoing center that you're going to be building up? I mean, like in perpetuity, and basically?
That's the goal. I mean, and hopefully things like this interview could help achieve that goal. The center came up because there were so many different people working on this and no kind of central place for us to join forces. So I was working on it here from a medical perspective and a philosophical perspective. There were colleagues working on it from a theological perspective. Of course, the term placebo is a Latin term used in a religious context initially. And then other colleagues in sociology, these two authors, the Suskins, wrote a book called The Future of Professions, where they claim that empathy, the doctors should not be required to do empathy, to be empathetic, because some of them just aren't good at it. We can outsource the empathy to empathetic experts, professionals. So that's one of the questions we'll pursue in the center. What does empathy look like in a digital age when you've got apps and programs to deliver healthcare? Where does empathy fit in? If it's important, how does it fit in? Can a robot be empathetic? Some people think it can. They can. Some people think they can. These are questions that need to be researched.
I saw on the website you had a whole list of questions that you wanted to address. So it's kind of like framing the center as kind of like this inquiry into the nature of empathy.
It's probably important to state at this stage that the center is just starting. I mean, we've only, and be launched officially next week. We're gathering together a board of directors and try to shape the priorities. So we all know what we have a menu of things we'd like to research, and setting up some priorities and getting funding for these to research these priorities. And of course, not just researching, but an important part of research nowadays, which motivates me, is implementing the research. Whereas some research, and mostly in the past, content just to write a paper in an academic journal. What motivates people in this group and myself are the desire to implement the research, to actually improve patient care. And I anticipate doing this in various ways that we can talk about if you like.
Yeah, so you're looking for some kind of interventions on how to foster more empathy in the healthcare system?
So there's two steps I see to this, Edwin. So one step is just raising awareness. Right now, things like, if you say I'm going to give a pill for pain, that makes sense to people. People often run to grab the pill. And we need the pills sometimes. So this empathy program is not against drugs or against pills or against the pharmaceutical industry. It's just to say there's another option if you like. So the raising awareness of the benefits, I'm basically going to give people an effect size. What is the effect size of a doctor being empathetic compared to the effect size of a drug? And we can choose which one we'd like to use. That's the first step, raising awareness, making it more concrete, and thus motivating people to pursue this. The second will be an intervention. Yes, there are some interventions out there, but we hope to design and develop and implement one that's based on the latest evidence that we're producing right now. So basically, it's important to discuss the history as well. Before the advent of modern medicine is wonderful. I probably wouldn't be alive today if it weren't for modern medicine. But before modern medicine, all doctors had was their so-called bedside manner. Now, that's been lost. Doctors all believe in it. I'm not a medical doctor. My colleagues are some of the most wonderful people I've ever met. I couldn't do their job. However, they're burdened with these guidelines and prescribing targets, and they don't have the time or space to explore the possibility of delivering a more empathetic consultation in cases. The system is against them. So by giving the evidence and providing with an intervention, we hope to encourage its use. It doesn't have to replace treatments. It can enhance the benefits of treatments. It's not like you deliver empathy to someone with metastatic cancer and all of a sudden everything will go away. However, being empathetic make them feel better, lower their anxiety, improve their quality of life, help them make better decisions, etc.
Mm-hmm. Well, looks like the space you're working in is within the medical field. I've been interested in how do we foster empathy really in society, kind of make empathy a primary social value in basically all the different institutions and the society in general. And and it seems to me that the insights gained in individual disciplines is actually quite transferable. So if you develop interventions that work in the medical field, they tend to work in other fields too, like in terms of fostering empathy. So if there's a doctor, they can be more, listen better and be more empathic. You know, those processes get transferred into in the education field, or even creating an environment where everyone that the patient actually becomes more empathic as well, and that they have their families, right? That it can be expanded from, we do something called empathy circles. So it's something that families can actually do. So before a patient goes to the doctor, they can actually get empathy from, empathic listening, be heard deeply about their concerns and anxieties from their family. So I think this all kind of overlaps.
That's something that I'm very happy to hear that. I mean, of course, medicine and medical practice is part of a society. So this can be, maybe what I'm doing is, like what we're doing here is one brick in this big house that you're talking about in society. I'd love to explore the synergies between the different, we too often in medicine, in academia in general, and even in life, work on our own silos. I work in philosophy and medicine, so I'm already bridging one of the gaps there. There's always more to bridge, and the more we can communicate and find overlapping areas to synergize efforts that's wonderful.
Yeah, it sounds like you're really looking for the interdisciplinary part, bring all the different practitioners, all different disciplines together around this one theme of empathy, and bring all the different expertise together, or integrate the expertise.
Exactly. So as I mentioned, the Suskins are working on empathy in a digital age, and that will definitely feed into our eventual intervention. Perhaps if it's evidence-based, Sir Muir Gray, who's involved in the program as well, he's interested in how delivering empathetic consultations can increase value in healthcare. There's Josh Horden in theology, my colleague Andrew Papanikitas, working on it from an ethical perspective and a theological perspective. So there are many people. People are excited about this. In terms of society, you're right, patients need to learn to be empathetic with the doctors as well, because it's a two-way, it's communication, it's a two-way street. So I agree with that altogether. Yes, it's okay. Glad that we'll, hopefully we'll explore some avenues to collaborate on.
Yeah. So how do you see your center going forward? Sounds like you're just launching it. You're launching the website in a week or two. And what's kind of the plan to go forward with it, or build it up?
I think the first step is to prioritize our research questions. I know what I'm already doing. I'd like to collaborate with other people and make a communal decision about what the priorities are. Then choose one of those priorities and apply for funding to get it funded, or it depends how much funding is required. Start actually moving forward on it to improve the empathy in medical. We're focusing mostly on medical care from an interdisciplinary perspective. So how to move that forward.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so it's going to be get together with the different researchers, find the area that you want to focus on, get funding for that area, and then move forward in that area.
Of course, they already have ideas. There are already some ideas that I have. For example, one thing I'd love to do is with some colleagues at Southampton, Felicity Bishop and George Lewis, and we've already moved that. We already have a proposal for this. It's under review currently. Develop an intervention for doctors, a brief empathy training program, where doctors engage with it, enhance their empathy. They're the most empathetic and resilient people on the planet, probably. But like I said, they often are overloaded with paperwork, and the empathy aspect is not valued. So we hope to provide them with a forum to value it, and then look at whether that improves patient outcomes. I can't talk about details because it's under review now, of course.
Okay. So you're going to create an intervention and then test that intervention, see how effective it is.
Exactly. Yes. Yes.
Oh, great.
Who's pain outcome? Yeah.
Excuse me. What was that? About pain outcome?
That's right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so you, on another similar topic, though, you'd written a paper, Empathetic Doctors, It's Never Just in Your Mind and Exposing Descartes' Error. Do you have some comments about what that article was about?
Yeah, that's not an academic article. That's a newsletter it's for my forthcoming book. I'm writing a book about, basically it's a book about the body's ability to heal itself without drugs. It's not anti-drugs, it's just another way that you can use alongside drugs if they're needed. So this exposes a philosophical presupposition. One of the barriers towards getting empathy implemented in healthcare research is the Descartes separated the mind and the body.
Mm-hmm.
So if the body's just a machine, then how's empathy going to help it? Being empathetic with my car doesn't make it go faster. If my body's a machine, being empathetic might make them feel good in some vague, wishy-washy way, but it won't have some, hard physiological benefit to the patient. However, this separation of so-called mind and so-called body doesn't stand to reason. If I make you think, this is an example many people use, if right now Edwin or anyone watching this thinks of squeezing the juice from a bitter lemon on their tongue, and the juice gets swished around their mouth, right away most of them feel some sensations in their mouth, which are the digestive enzymes being created. So that's just an example of the thought and the physiology, the psychology and the biology being connected intimately. There are other
I can already feel the taste in my mouth as you mentioned it.
Lemonade, right?
Yeah, exactly.
If you think of something, some stressful event, right away your adrenaline levels can go up measurably. Another example people use, which is a bit, more, rowdy, is people think about sex and their body changes in a physiological way that can be measured quite easily by scientists.
Mm-hmm. So you're bringing in the philosophical part, like in Descartes, I guess that was like you're saying there's a differentiation of sort of the mind and body, and then reason. It was kind of like saying everybody's individualistic, they're on their own. Reason is sort of this supernatural force that's beyond the body somehow, and everyone's into doing their own self-interest. Is kind of like some of the premises there, and that empathy kind of shows that that's not accurate. That we are actually, as you're saying, the mind is connected with the body. It's all kind of integrated, really. That if you think of something, it's bringing up emotions, physical sensations, and there's also the whole mirror neurons that show that we're kind of interrelated as well. They're not separate beings.
Mm-hmm. So
you're the philosopher, probably know this much. That's just kind of my general understanding here. But
I mean, I empathize with everything you said. However, I stick to things which are based on systematic reviews of randomized trials. So a lot of those things you said weren't, other than things that just don't make sense. Like it doesn't make sense to separate the mind and the body. No serious scientist today believes that. Yet the language of that's just psychological, or what's the physiological outcome? That's the kind of that's a presupposition before we even do science, that it's easy to expose as false. But with the examples I just showed you, you cannot separate the mind and the body. Even if you can't separate them. Even if you accept they're two different things, they're not separable. So this is a presupposition which is clearly false. And once you bust that myth, then you're able to see, well, being empathetic with someone, communicating in a different way, changing the so-called psychology, you open the door to seeing how that changes the physiology. And you can. They've done studies with brain scans and so on, and measured physiological outcomes in patients who've been delivered an empathetic consultation, and those seem to change. The evidence right now is sparse, and we're gathering all together now. So all this is, everything I'm saying now is tentative, of course, until my mega study, my review comes out.
Yeah, so that's actually, if we look at what the blocks are to empathy, it's almost this philosophical view. Is it like a block to empathy? Is that kind of accurate? Like Descartes' model of reality is almost like a block. It's a mental block to fostering more empathy. I don't know, is that kind of what?
Yeah, that's it. I mean, the idea that the mind and body can be separated is a kind of conceptual block. And if you think, even if a child or a teenager who doesn't have a degree, if you explain it to them about the lemon and so on, they also understand that you can't separate the two. So people talk about, and it's not wacky stuff. It's not mind over matter. It's you know, your thoughts. There's measurable things. It's no serious scientist, no serious biologist today would agree to it. Although we all continue, myself included, speaking of things. Oh, that's a psychological intervention. That's a physiological intervention. And there's no such. You can't separate the two. You can describe different kinds of interventions. Some involve talking to somebody. Some involve taking a pill, but neither one is purely psychological or purely physiological.
Yeah, I think that's very important, that part. It's like, it's kind of that thinking has permeated society. And if you can get society to see that this is not actually accurate, there's going to be more of an openness to accepting empathy and how the physiological bodily sensations and the sharing of those is just how things really work physiologically. That's going to open up. And there's George Lakoff. I'm not sure, don't know if you know him, but he's a linguist here at UC Berkeley, and he's written about that all the premises of enlightenment reasoning, he says, are basically kind of physiologically, scientifically inaccurate. And he also kind of advocates for a kind of this empathic way of being.
Wow. What's his name?
George Lakoff.
Yes, I've heard that. Yes. So yeah, that's all. That's what I mean. And we don't even have to go into wishy-washy areas. I stick firmly because I know that we're going into an area that people do find difficult to grasp. I'm just talking about systematic reviews of randomized trials, which is what I'm doing. Now, another thing, we don't have to go into some kind of spiritual worldview to explain empathy. It's quite simple. I mean, we've all been to the doctor. Sometimes symptoms are embarrassing to share. For example, someone might have an itch somewhere that's embarrassing to talk about. If you feel that the doctor's not empathetic, you might not share the symptoms. And if you don't share the symptoms, how can the doctor make a good prescription? They won't make an accurate diagnosis. And without an accurate diagnosis, how can they make an accurate treatment prescription? So these are just some of the mechanisms for how empathy improves health are very straightforward. I mean, being empathetic lowers stress. Lowering stress has health benefits, lowers anxiety. You can measure these things. If someone feels that they're relaxed because the doctor cares about them, they feel cared for, their levels of adrenaline and cortisol are reduced, and that has many downstream benefits. Other one I just mentioned, like I said, provides an open forum to share symptoms. If the doctor is in a rush, and it's not, as I said, it's not their fault. Doctors are some of the most fantastic, resilient people. It's not about telling them what to do. They know what they're doing. It's about valuing and empowering them to do some of the things they do best, which is empathetic communication. I know I've repeated that several times, but it's important to get the message across that we're not saying the doctors aren't doing their job. They're doing their job so well that the government and other organizations are loading them up with too much work. So, they make sharing symptoms to help the doctors make an accurate diagnosis and prognosis and treatment regime.
So if you can show the importance of empathy within the system, then that could also help the institutions kind of support the government, and other institutions could support doctors in that work.
It's a choice. So I don't know the results from my review yet, but I mean, there's some drug treatments that have very modest effects over and above placebo effects. So the effect for mild to moderate pain, mild to moderate depression, and mild to moderate anxiety, the effect size of the characteristic feature of the drug over and above placebo is quite small. It doesn't mean those things don't exist. It doesn't mean pain, depression, or anxiety don't exist. It just means they're placebo responsive. So you have a small effect of a drug, you have a similarly robust but small effective empathy, then you have a choice if you're the doctor. And both choices are equally valued. Right now, only one of those choices is valued. Prescribe the drug, which might be the best thing in some cases. Some patients might not want to hear, they just want a pill and they demand it. And that's okay. Other ones might not like pills, or they might not like the side effects of the pills. And the doctor in that case has a choice. Well, you know what? I'm going to take a bit longer with you today. Or it's not always longer apparently, but let's just say it might be longer. I'll take a bit longer with you today and explore some of the issues, and you see how you feel and see if you improve. And that might have the similar effect as a drug. Now they don't have that choice. With the evidence we're providing and the interventions we're developing, doctors will then have that choice.
Okay, so I guess the next step would be is when I'm getting a little bit of feedback here, but is there anything in conclusion that you'd like to say, or and then we can also follow up at some other time when as you do the research, maybe, and hear how this research is progressing.
Fantastic. Summarize. For many common ailments that we all suffer from, and that doctors spend a lot of time dealing with, family practitioners and general practitioners deal with, empathy is like a drug. The doctor is the cure in many cases. That's what I want to summarize.
Okay, well, thank you for this dialogue, and look forward to following up in the future.
So do I. Thank you.